Good morning, I'm Pastor Allen. Today is Monday, September 28th, and we are looking at Matthew chapter 25, verses 31 through 46 for our daily Bible study. And this is a parable about the goats and the sheep, or some call it the Judgement. When the Son of Man comes in his glory and all the angels with him, he will sit on his glorious throne. All the nations will be gathered before him, and he will separate the people one from another as a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. He will put the sheep on his right and the goats on his left. Then the king will say to those on his right, "Come, you who are blessed by my Father, take your inheritance, the kingdom prepared for you since the creation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me in. I needed clothes, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you looked after me. I was in prison, and you came to visit me." Then the righteous will answer him, "Lord, when did we see you hungry, or feed you, or thirsty, and give you something to drink? When did we see you a stranger and invite you in, or needing clothes and clothe you? When did we see you sick or in prison and go to visit you?" The king will reply, "Truly I tell you, whatever you did to one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me." Then he will say to those on his left, "Depart from me, you who are cursed, into the eternal fire prepared for the devil and his angels. For I was hungry, and you gave me nothing to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me nothing to drink. I was a stranger, and you did not invite me in. I needed clothes, and you did not clothe me. I was sick and in prison, and you did not look after me." They also will answer, "Lord, when did we see you hungry or thirsty or a stranger or needing clothes or sick or in prison and did not help you?" He will reply, "Truly I tell you, whatever you did not do for one of the least of these, you did not do for me." Then they will go away to eternal punishment, but the righteous to eternal life. Well, sheep and goat were very common in Jesus' time. And the shepherding methods and the way that they were cared for is very different from our modern age. But Jesus is using the sheep and the goats to show the sheep as believers and the goats as unbelievers. And sheep and goats often grazed together out in the field, but when it came time to pen them up, when it came time to shear them, when it came time to do stuff with the sheep, they separated them into the goats and the sheep. And his hearers were very familiar with this. Well, he compares us as sheep and goats, that is, believers and unbelievers, and there will be a time of separation. In verse 31, the Son of Man, Jesus, is going to return, and he's going to bring his angels with him. Then he will sit on his glorious throne. In verse 32, all the nations will be gathered before him. All the nations, every person on earth will be gathered before the throne of Jesus. And he will separate the goats and the sheep, or the believers and unbelievers, just like a shepherd does. And in verse 33, it tells us the sheep will be on his right, the goats on his left, and verse 34 tells us exactly why this happens. The sheep are blessed and will receive an inheritance. The kingdom that has been prepared for them, they will receive since the creation of the world. That's pretty amazing. we have a kingdom. If we are a believer, we have a kingdom that has been prepared for us since the creation of the world. And God knew and planned for this since creation. And then verses 35 through 40 gives us the reason for receiving this praise and blessing. Giving the hungry something to eat, giving the thirsty something to drink, inviting in the stranger, people needing clothes and giving them clothes, people that were sick and looking after the sick. That's where hospices and hospitals came from. Christians started those, and they took care of the sick, especially during the plagues and of the Middle Ages, and when others would have nothing to do with the sick. It was the Christians that took care of the sick. In fact, the Romans would put baby girls out and expose them, leave them out to die, but it was the Christians who took them in and raised them as people of value. And so that's the example that we've been giving, and that is what Jesus is looking for. That we help the less fortunate, that we help the needy. And then it concludes, I was in prison and you came to visit me. And then the righteous will say, Lord, when did we see you hungry or feed you or thirsty or give you something to drink? And Jesus says, when you have done it to the very least person, you've done it for me. So that's something for us to remember. And then verse 41 tells us what happens to the goats. Number one, they will be told to depart from Jesus. They don't have a place in the kingdom. They will be considered cursed. And then they will be sent into the eternal fire, which was prepared for the devil and his angels. See, the fire, the eternal fire that the unbelievers will be sent into was originally created for Satan and his angels as a place of punishment. But those that don't believe, after all the opportunities, after all the words, after all the examples that Jesus gives us, it will also be a place of punishment for the unbelievers. And then he gives his reasons in verses 42 through 43. For I was hungry, and you gave me nothing to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me nothing to drink. I was a stranger, you did not invite me in. I needed clothes, you did not clothe me. I was sick in prison, and you did not look after me. This is the same opportunities that the believers had, and they did something about it. The unbelievers had the opportunity, and they didn't do anything with it. They ignored the least and the lowly. And because they didn't believe in Jesus, they are being punished. And then it says, well, they will ask in verses 44 and 45, which is the opposite of the sheep, Lord, when did we see you hungry or thirsty or a stranger or needing clothes or sick or in prison and did not help you? And that's when he says, truly I tell you, whatever you did not do for the least of these, you did not do for me. So we have a choice. We can help the least as believers, or we could ignore them. But ignoring them has consequences. Jesus is our example of love, and he wants us to love others. And the best way we can do that is by doing it physically and doing it in the ways that actually help people. Feeding them, giving them water when they're thirsty, giving them clothes, visiting them in prison, and being available to those that are sick. So I hope that you'll take Jesus' words seriously and do what he says. And in verse 46 it says, then they will go away, the goats, They will go away to eternal punishment, but the righteous to eternal life. And that's a final reminder from Jesus. And I hope that's one that we take to heart. Have a great day. Talk to you tomorrow.